Hello and welcome to the class today. Today I'm going to show you how to paint a seagull. It's not a difficult painting. In actual fact, I think seagulls are probably one of the easiest birds to paint. But I think you're going to enjoy it anyway. Alright, let's go and take a look and see what the picture looks like. Then we'll work it out from there. So as you can see, the seagull is part of a larger painting that we're busy painting on the website. I'll leave a link down below if you want to go and follow the whole tutorial. For today, we're just concentrating on the seagull itself. So as you can see, I have painted the clouds already, just to get us going. I do have cloud painting tutorials which I'll link below and you can go and follow those. Today we'll just paint the seagull. So let's head over to the photo and go and take a look. Okay, so how would we even tackle something like this? Because you've got all these different textures and stuff inside the bird. What I would do in a case like this is I'm going to look for the overall color and ignore all the little textures. For example, here on the neck, can you see you've got all these different colored feathers that are forming a texture? I'm going to ignore that and I'm going to look at the overall color. Here it's white, and then as we go around it's gradually becoming more and more gray. There it's white, it's also becoming more and more gray. So you've got to sort of look at, let's zoom well in, take a look over here and take a look over there. Can you see that's more like a grayish color that white has become, simply because in this case our sun is coming from the right to the left, so it's brighter here, and as it cools away from the light it gets darker and darker. So I'm going to put in that basic shape first. The same with the beak, it's light there, it's gradually becoming darker to this side as it cools away from the light. Here as well, you got light going to dark, then light going to dark, as you've got those roundings. And then overall over here it's lighter, the feathers are lighter here, gradually getting darker over there as they curl away from the sunlight. So I'm going to get those basic shapes, you could say, painted in. And then from there you'll come back in and you'll add textures and things like these different kinds of colored feathers over it. And by doing it that way, you've broken down the bird into manageable chunks. So you first got its shape, and then you've added the textures onto the shape. Great, so let's go and do that. So first off, let's head over to the palette and we're going to mix ourselves a few colors. So I am painting in oil today. So the main color we see, there's definitely some titanium white. So let's put some of that down. And then for the body itself, if we take a look here by the neck, it just seems to be like a bit of a gray kind of color. So I think I'm going to start off by putting down a Paynes gray. Just a little bit of that, and I think that, yeah, maybe I'll put on a little bit more. The Paynes grey is definitely in the tail feathers and the wing feathers as well. It's going to be a Paynes grey type of color. And then if I look at the underneath on the belly side of the bird, it's more of a browny color, so I think I'll put on a bit of a raw umber there. We can work that into the white to get that color. And then if I look here at the tip of the wing, that white over there, that seems to be more of a bluey color. In other words, it's reflecting a little bit of the sky color, and we'll possibly have a little bit of that on the neck as well. So the Paynes grey is a blue-black, so maybe it'll get us there. Just maybe. If it doesn't, then we'll use a little bit of cerulean. So I think for now I won't put down any cerulean. We'll leave that at that. And then for the beak is an orangey color. So I'm going to put down a bit of cadmium orange over there. And that's clearly way too intense and way too dark for the beak. So I'll put down some cadmium yellow, which we can use to yellow down that color. So I think for now, let's stick for with those 5 colors. So it's titanium white, Paynes grey, raw umber, cadmium orange, and cadmium yellow. Probably put down way too little white, but it doesn't matter. Alrighty. So the white on the sun side. What I'm going to do there is just put in a tiny touch of yellow, just a smallest little speck. Can you see there? You can hardly even see it on the knife. And I'm going to just tap it off to get most of that off again and work it in here. The idea is just to get a little bit off-white with a warm color, a sun color. So that then makes your highlight area nice and bright and sunny. So I think while I'm at it, and as I've mixed the color, I'm going to quickly add in some painting medium into each of my colors. So the painting medium I'm going to use is some archival oils, odorless classic. You can use any thin medium, liquid, fine detail, anything like that. So I'll just pop some into a plastic dropper and just put, oh, that's such a tiny amount of paint. I think I'm even just going to put 1 drop in there. So let's work that in. And the reason why I'm adding that in there is just so that the paint will then dry quicker during the drying stage. It's not really to get the paint any thinner really, but obviously you add as much medium as you need just to get your paint to a creamy consistency, but don't make it too thin. Alright, now let's go for that darker color around the neck. So let's take, I'll take whatever's all that's left over there. And again, same thing, just a tiny speck of Paynes grey. I always say you can add more paint, but you can't take any out of the mix. So it's better to start with the tiniest amount of paint. Alright, so if I just hold this up, I'll take my paint onto the knife like this. Just a nice flat layer of paint. Can you see there? It hasn't got humps and bumps, just nice flat layer of paint. Then I hold this up against the canvas, or against my reference photo. Like, let me see if I can do this, like that, in the correct place. But obviously it's now over the bird's neck around. Yeah, I'm trying to point when it's one way on the screen and it's sideways for me. Yeah, I think you can do with just a little bit of blue in there. So I'll start with a touch more Paynes grey, but I think I will put just a speck of cerulean into that. So I'm going to just put a half a drop, barely nothing, over there. So we don't need much of it. Look there. You can hardly see what I'm adding. Let's just see what it does. No, not enough, so I'll add about the same amount again. And again, a little bit more bold this time. I don't want it to be blue. It mustn't appear too blue. I think that's maybe gone a little too far. Let's get some more Paynes grey back in there again. Alright, so the main thing that I'm checking for now is the contrast between there and there. Is that going to be enough? So compare more the contrast than the color. Yeah, so for now I think I'm happy with that color. We can always come back in with lighter values as we add detail. But can you see there's a good contrast there. If you have a good contrast between those guys and you paint them in, then you know that that neck will look nice and round because there's a big contrast between the light side and the dark side. Awesome. Let's go to that color underneath the belly. That's more of a browny color, that one. Let's get some more paint. And yeah, while we're at it, let's get our painting medium into this guy. Right, put some white and a little bit of raw umber. Again, just a speck. Let's see what it does to the color. I think that's nice for the highlight color in that area, definitely. So I'm going to put him over there by the highlight side. Let's get some more paint there again. And this time I get a bit more raw umber into the mix. Now mixing the shadow color. Check him. The raw umber is nice. Not bad. It does seem like there's areas where I need a bit more contrast in that area, just on the center area of the tail itself. Needs to go a bit darker. So I think when we get to that point, we'll maybe add a little bit more, just a bit of Paynes grey into that, maybe a bit more raw umber. We'll check it out as we go. But for underneath the belly, can you see you've got a nice contrast between there and there. There's a good contrast there again. So we should be good there. That guy didn't get his drop of medium. Cool. And then if I look at the wing itself and I look at that color there, that's definitely roughly the correct color. So we may be able to just modify that into a wing color as we go along. And if I look at the tail, it's pretty much that, maybe just little touches of white for highlights and details. So for now, I think let's stick with those colors over there. Let's head over to the canvas. So depending on the size of your bird, would depend on what brush you're going to use. Mine's reasonably small. It's sort of just a little bit broader than my hand. So I'm just going to use fine liners for this guy. Maybe I'll go over to using a Soft Filbert. So that's just like a half a centimeter, a quarter inch Soft Filbert. May go over to using that sort of in this larger area over here. Easiest. And I think here is the easiest. I know there's all those little ticks. Pretty easy. So I'll start with that white with a little bit of yellow in it. And I'm going to block it in. Am I going to particularly notice this? No, not really, because it's just off white. But if I look carefully, I can see it's there. Couldn't I have just left the canvas white over there? Yeah, I suppose you could have. But the thing is that this is now adding paint down there for two reasons. The first reason is, even if you don't paint this and you're not shading anything over here, if I ever need to cover this area up again, then I've got the color. You don't have the gesso itself. So you're never going to be able to mix that gesso color if you ever need to cover this area up. So now by painting it with one of your paint colors, you can easily cover it up. Then the second reason is it's adding some paint down there that I can blend the next colors into. Alrighty, so I'm just seeing where is it mostly as good as white, and I'm just blocking those areas in. So it sort of comes around to roughly this point over here, and then things start shading. So we do have our light coming slightly from the back, so you can see there's a slight bit of a highlight happening over there. Yeah, that's great. Alright, now I'm going to just wipe off the excess paint onto my paper towel. I don't think I need to wash this brush or anything like that at this point. Just wipe off the excess until you see no more is coming off on the brush. Now you can go over to your shadow color. Now we start at the opposite end. And let's get this area blocked in over here. While you're at it, compare the color. Are you happy with its tonal value? I think at this point I am. Mine looks alright. I hope yours is too. And I'm getting a nice sharp edge on the edge of the bird. Just so that you got a solid silhouette. So all of that comes around nicely to there. And I'm not putting pots of paint down here. Small amounts of paint. Just enough to cover the canvas. Great. So now we're getting to a point where here you've got that little no man's land where you've ended the highlight color and now you're ending your shadow color. So what I'll often do there is just take some of the highlight and some of the shadow and just mix an in-between color over here, and you can just judge a tonal value that's somewhere in between. Now what we want to do is take a look at the directions of the feathers. And you have to look really carefully, and now you can use that texture to your advantage to see that the directions of these feathers better. Because you'll see over here on this end, the back of the neck, the feathers are going in that direction. Here in the center they're going in this direction, and then here by the front of the neck they're going a little bit more like that. And as they come down, they're doing this kind of a thing, and then they curl around to meet the belly, and on the belly they're doing this, and so on. So you need to look at those directions, and now we need to get those directions in. So when I pick up the paint, let's bring up that palette there for a second. I pick up the paint like this, turn the brush 180 degrees, pick it up again, and look there. You see it's giving me that beautiful sharp chisel point. So I can use that to get a feather effect. But looking at the photograph, you can see it's not a strong feather effect. It's very subtle. The seagull have incredibly soft feathers and fine feathers. So I'm going to just very gently start putting in some of this, and now's the time when you can also start adding a little bit more painting medium into the mix. So I'll even just put a drop down there just to mix it in as I go along. because you don't want to be pressing hard. You want a super soft touch. And if this brush is not working for you, then go ahead and add or use a fine liner, a finer brush. Okay, so that there needs to go dark under the chin. So I'm just adding that a little bit darker over there. Got a nice little shadow, and it's picking up a little bit of oranges and stuff. So at the end of the day, here I'm using the no man's land color, the mid-tone, essentially. And I'm just adding a few little dabs and dashes like this to create a bit of a feather effect. Just so that it's got a bit of a contrasty color. And I'll go into the dark and into the light. And by doing that, I'm creating myself a bit of a shading from light on this side through to the dark on that side. But that shading is now not just a normal solid rounded shading like a ball anymore. Now it's got a bit of texture, so it looks like feathers. So I just want to go over to using a finer brush. Just going to use a little fine liner like this. Then I don't have to keep making my chisel point every 2 minutes. So it's not a harsh tonal value difference. It's just enough to give us some texture. Because remember, this area of the bird is white, so we can't go too harsh on our colors and stuff. Alright, so can you see there, however, is a little bit of a dent. So I'm going to go over to my shadow color over there. Let's work that in. Just using dabs and stabs. So you get that little solid piece in there. And then as we go outwards, it's going to instantly mix with the highlight color that we've pre-blocked in. And it's instantly going to give me a shading. Can you see that? In that effect, I think I'm going to go ever so slightly darker on that. So I'm just adding a little bit more Paynes grey into the mix. Just a little bit more. Not too much. No, that's too much. It's very subtle. You're essentially working with greys in this area over here. It's better, eh? As we work it in, you will blend and you'll go a little bit lighter. Yeah, that should be fine. Right. So even here in the highlight area, I'm going to add just a few little dabs and dashes to get me a texture. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a texture. Okay, now I'm going to pick up, just wipe the brush on my cloth, on my paper towel, just to get rid of the worst. Yeah, from our no man's land, we're going to take some of the light and mix it into the no man's land area, just in that little texture directions, because that's not giving us the detail. Can you see there? You're already starting to see a nice little texture detail effect over there. So it looks like fine little feathers. But all you've done is just used a few little random stripes. Quite simple, really. Okay, over here, let's bring that down to its correct place. So it is other little dark wing colors coming in here as well in that area. That's fine. Right, yeah, just on the back of the head. I think I may even just use my artist license and make this a little bit darker. While you're watching the class, please hit the like button. I know it only takes a second, but it really helps me because it tells YouTube that this class that you're watching is worth showing to other artists and that they'll benefit from it as well. Then also leave a comment. Tell me what you thought about the class. Let me know what other classes you want me to do. And of course, if you've got questions, ask them below and I'll answer them for you. That little bit of extra dark on the back over there is just sort of adds an extra little bit of rounding. Right, let's come around over here. So here we never blocked in anything light over there. So I'm just going to take my original brush and just block that white in just on that edge over there. Everything else is reasonably dark. So I'll go carefully around the eye. Then it's lighter over there by the mouth again. So I will zoom in a little bit more in a minute. I just want you to get that overall feeling of that roundness. Can you see how the neck looks round now? Alright, let me zoom in, then you can see the textures that I'm painting a little bit better as well. Alrighty, can you see there? It's just tiny little dabs and dashes really. Here I'm going in with the lightest color, our highlight color. You will mix in with that little bit of color that's there and give us just an off highlight kind of color. Great. Here that line is just a little bit too straight, too harsh, so I'm just breaking him up a little bit by adding a few extra little feather dabs and dashes over there. And I think we can also just widen him up a little bit more as well. And all these dabs and dashes that we're adding in are all in the direction of the feathers. Every single one is in the direction of the feathers. That's looking better there, eh? Great. Let's continue running along down there. So over there we've got just a little bit of a highlight, because that's now the top edge of that wing comes out there like that. So just work in a bit more white into that. And then from here we've got a little bit of a dent in over there. And here, as that wing, these hairs tuck in underneath the wing, it's being cast, a little shadow is being cast over there. But now look carefully and you'll see those hairs are going in this direction. All like this. this area over here, all these hairs are going into this direction. If you can see it, that means you need to add a little bit of tonal value in there. That's really subtle. Cool, let's come on down here. And as we come down here, that's a little bit too dark. Can you see that? A little bit too dark for that area. There is a little bit of a shadow happening in this area. Here we can have that dark over there. So just, you can either soften it up with your finger or just add some lighter, whiter little stripes over it. So you're often going to find when you're doing something like this, because it's just off white, that when you're sitting up close and you're looking at your reference up close, you don't always see those little differences. But when you stand back, then you are going to see those differences. For example, here, this little shadow area over here, it's really subtle. So you have to be super vigilant to make sure that you see these guys. Like over there, there's just a little bit of a dent. It's obviously in between where two feathers meet. There's a little bit of an indentation over there. Alrighty. As we go further down there, now we're starting to head towards these browning feathers. And we've also got some of these feathers over here overlapping other ones. So for now, I think I'm going to stop over there. Let's go back to the top and let's finish off the face and let's add the textures and stuff like that. Because we've definitely got the shape. And we've got a good feel for those feathers. We've got a feather look already. Right, so I think let's start off by working in that eye. And then we'll add all that texture and stuff around it. So I'm seeing a bit of a very thin orange. Very thin little orange. So I'm going to just suggest it. It's so fine. I'm using just some neat orange. So there's some orange. And there's some grey. Just a darker grey, so I'm just doing a little impromptu mix over there. Darker grey over there, and then wash and clean the brush, and use some neat Paynes grey. There we go. Let's get that pupil in over there. I'm seeing just a tiny touch of black over. Sort of in this vicinity around here. I think it's just feathers coming out over there, so I'm going to take that a little bit too far. And just a little bit of black over here, whatever's left on the brush. It's just going to edge off that orange. Cool, let's work out that texture. So I'm going to take this dark over here, I'm going to add some, because I see it is a bit brownish. I'm going to add a little bit of raw umber into that, plus some more Paynes grey. So that's giving us a bit of a browny highlight color. And I'm going to start, because if I mess this up, it's not going to look good, right? So I'm going to start in an area where there's lots of this texture, so that I can get a feel for how this texture is going on. And that way, if I do mess it up, it's in an area where there's lots, so I'm not really going to notice it if I do make adjustments. And I'm just using little dabs and dashes. There's a little bit of an eyebrow over there, so I'm leaving a tiny bit of light. Just to show the eyebrow. Great. That color there forms a bit of a mouth. So I am following the texture and the positionings of the textures on the bird somewhat. I'm never ever going to get it exact, right? It's just impossible. Alright, so now I can already see that I put down over there was too stripy. Where this here that I'm putting down with less paint on my brush is sort of blending in with the color that's underneath, and that's giving me a more natural look. So now I know already, I did mark that up because it needs to be a bit more blended in. It mustn't be so solid stripes, so it's defined stripes. So I clean the brush and then I work it in and blend it in with the color underneath a bit more. And that's the reason why you always start in an area that's got lots, so that you can make those adjustments. It's forgiving that area, where an area maybe like here where there's hardly anything, if you don't get that right, it's not going to be as forgiving. So what I am also now looking for is just, you find that these little markings appear in patches, and often those patches also correspond to changes in shape on the bird. For example, here, sort of underneath the cheek, it's at its darkest, underneath the cheek area over that. So you use that to define that little cheek area over there. Yeah, this little piece over here, it's coming out on the rounding of the mouth. So that helps you to get that rounding and show that rounding correctly, and so on. So see, I think I brought down a little bit too far, so I'm just taking some lighter colors and pushing him back up again. Like I said, I'm not trying to get an exact copy of this bird. All I want to do is create the look of the bird. Great. Here in this area, we should actually have added a little bit more shading over there. We didn't quite do that, so I'm taking just a little bit of the bird's shadow color, just working it in there, over that, and then just fading him out this way. Great. It's now just showing us that rounding over there. Add one or two little textures back in there again. That's cool. Great. Let's work our way down the neck over here. So those guys are a little bit more prominent. So I'm working in even more raw umber and even more Paynes grey into that mix to get them darker. So here I'm looking at the direction of these little marks. I'm just dabbing them in that direction. They seem to form almost like little bit of lines running down in that direction. So I know I can't copy the texture exact, so I'm just going to do a similar effect running down there. That's all I can do. Nothing else. Impossible to get that exact. Well, I suppose not impossible, but it would take way too long. It's not worth it to try and get it exact. Okay, and then as we get to this area, it seems to be running more along that kind of a direction over there, like that. And these guys here also seem to be a lot more like blended in, so I'm not picking up paint as often, so that they can blend in a little bit more. Yes, I do like to use the marks as a guide, you know, get it in similar places, but it's never going to be exact at places. It's just not possible. As long as when you stand back, it looks like a seagull, not necessarily the seagull. Then you're A for away. You're all good. Yeah, some nice subtle little texture. So I'm making sure that there's very little paint on the brush, and I'm using them just to dot those in. And as the paint gets less and less on the brush, I'm moving more and more into the highlight area, so that I know it's becoming more and more subtle Just a few little marks. You can see like around here. This is super subtle, so I'm just dabs and dashes and then work it in by going over it multiple times. As I've got those guys in, I'm seeing that some of these guys you can go in the face area, can go a little bit darker. So I'm just, what would you say, re-establishing them, but just a bit more bolder this time. Especially here around the eye, because those darker guys here around the eye is making the eye itself sort of recede or sink into the face. So you don't end up with all these super bright guys around the eye. Alrighty, so as we come down here, things become a lot more subtle, so I'm just sort of laying off on the amount of paint that's on the brush. And the same over here, just a few little browner marks running down here. Now that I've got that in, I can also see that this little area here can go with a little bit more contrast. I'm just gently darkening that up a little bit more. Same as down here. Just gently darkening that up a little bit more. Great, we're starting to see a bird there, eh? Okay, this here is still the same tonal value as that because we used white there. So I'm just going to take whatever's around here and just push it into there. Just with basically a light little mix. Just blending that into there, just so that I can see that I've got a tonal value difference between there and there, so that this is nice and bright. Great. Wipe the brush just on my paper towel or my cloth and just add in one or two little loose dashes over there. There was a little bit of a hard line over there. Before we continue, I want to briefly tell you about my real-time paint and draw along art classes on my website. For a very small amount, you can get access to over 400 paint and draw along tutorials where you pack out your art supplies and you follow along as I show and explain to you in step-by-step detail how to complete each project. There are classes in acrylic, oil, watercolor, pencil, soft pastel, and even lesser known mediums like pen and ink and sketchboarding. There's a link in the description below. Take a look. You'll be amazed at the awesome classes available there. Alrighty, let's continue from where we left off. Right, while we're in this area, we may as well tackle that beak. So I'm just wiped off the brush, didn't bother washing it or anything. Take some white and orange and yellow. Blend them into each other. Now what I'm looking for is that main color of the beak, sort of that's in that area over there. If I can mix that, then I'm happy. There's just a tiny amount of paint because it's such a small beak. Just a tiny amount of paint. Let's put that down there and see what it looks like. Could go more intense, eh? So let's get way more orange into that. Way more yellow and less white. Let's see, check him now. That's better. Great. Let's get a bit of medium into that, so that he can also dry quicker. Just a tiny touch. Alright, so the beak, it's quite easy to get lost. So what I'm going to do with the beak is just do, say, the bottom half first, and then the top half. And that's why I don't lose the shape. Alrighty, so let's go a little bit darker towards the bottom. Just tiny amounts of shading over there. Then here in this area it's quite a random little mark. And I like that because that adds detail. So I'm going to add that. So there's some neat orange over there. Like that. And it's almost a black. So I think I'm going to use a Paynes grey. I was trying to decide between Paynes grey and Umber, but I think I'll use the Paynes grey. There's a little mark. Just dab that in there. Let those colours slightly blend in with each other. What the heck, why not? Okay, now we need something lighter. So I'm going to just take some, I think I'll wash the brush just to get rid of that black. That Paynes grey that was on there. Okay, so some yellow. And just the tiniest touch of the orange into that. And some white. Because what we're looking for now is that nice highlight color. Like that. We can add just a little bit of that highlight over here, just on the top edge. To show that rounding over there. And the top of the start of the top of the beak. Sort of, we can say there where the mouth meets the top and the bottom beak meet. Make sure you've got a bit of a contrast over there. Okay, now we can go back to the light. I'll pretty much block the rest of that beak in over there. With this light. Again, to ensure you've got that nice little contrast. So now I'm going to take that little bit of a dark that I did put in over here and just gently blend him upwards. Gently blend him upwards, and that gives you that rounding in the beak over there. And then the tip of the beak, I can see is white, but I'm going to leave him in this orange because he's quite light. He appears almost white. I'll just add that in over there like that. Okay, that's cool. Then here I can see there's just a little bit of a browny kind of a line running along there. So I'll take a bit of raw umber into the orange. just to create that browny kind of a thing. Let's pop that little line in there. Just a suggestion of it. Pick up more, just neat raw umber. There's a touch of neat raw umber in this vicinity around here, like that. More neat raw umber. Because here there's a little bit of a line that goes down and slightly backwards, but not quite at the bottom. Just like that. It's quite subtle. So I use the Beak color, pushing that up. And we can get our white in the right place there, like that. Then we've got a little bit of a mark over there on the top beak as well. So use a bit of Paynes grey. Just that little dot over there. That's enough. Awesome. Let's move down and let's go and paint the rest of that, the body area. Alrighty, I think we'll continue painting and in a wide view like this for a while now, because you know the technique that I'm using. I may now, here it's a bit of a larger area, so I'm going to go from that brush to that brush. A little bit of a bigger brush because we don't need such fine details underneath here as what we need on the neck. And let's face it, these feathers here are larger than what we have on the neck. So in the end of the day, larger feathers, larger brush. And what am I using now? I'm going to use these guys over here. So we've got no paint over here at the moment. That's still raw canvas. So I'm looking for the overall color. There it was mostly that white with a little bits of shadows in the end of the day over there. Here it's more of the darks with little bits of highlights. So I'm going to start with this color over here, a darker color, and let's pretty much block this entire area in. Then we'll lighten him up from there. So as you work now, please be careful that you don't touch that beautiful seagull head that you've painted. That would be a catastrophe if you're going to smudge that now. It's looking so good. Alright, so I'm just checking. It sort of comes through around here. Here's our transition from that light to this brown in that area over there. So I can't go any further than that. I'll just keep working in this color over here just to get this all blocked in. So if you need to use a mile stick, do that to keep your hand away from the canvas over there. Okay, just a very basic block in. And then over here, it sort of comes out to around this vicinity, more or less, just past the tip of the roof over there. So it is darker, but it's fine. This gets me started. And then there's a feather happening over there. So I do want to keep that little piece light, because that's going to just remind me, where is that? Alrighty, great. Now I'll go back to a bit of a smaller brush again. Otherwise, you could take that brush and just form him into a chisel point. But I'll go back to this nice little fine liner here again. But I'm sticking with the same color, because now we can create that nice little transition using this color and the same marks. Exactly the same marks. Right, so we've got that coming up over there, and then just above it there's a nice little darker area. So I'll put that in. Yeah, I think that's enough transition between the front color and the back color. So there's quite a bit of colors in between each other over there. Alright, so checking this out, I can already see, can you see this tonal value is way too light. That's almost our highlight color, what it should be. So we can go way darker. So I'll take that highlight color. I know he's not right whatsoever. So I'm going to take the raw umber, work it in there in a bit more generous quantities this time. To get a darker tonal value. I'm adding new paint, so I'm going to add just another drop of medium into that. Okay, so what am I looking for at this stage? I'm looking for a good contrast between that color and that color. There has to be a good contrast. Let's try that one. There is a good contrast. We may need a little bit darker here and there, but it'll get us a good start. So I'll pick up some of this paint, and I'm going to take a look and see where is it at his darkest. Around here. If you need to, you can work in a bit more painting medium into your dark paint, just to get him to flow off the brush nicely. There, here I can see there's a little line over there. And each of these little lines are sort of shadings. So I put down the line and then I fade him upwards. And everything is using just those little short strokes, because that's what's giving us the feather texture. Yeah, it's a better color here. I think we can still here and there go darker, and that's fine. We'll definitely do that just by picking up some raw umber. Because all this is raw umber and white anyway, so. Just dabs and dashes. Nothing else. Does seem like I can go a little bit darker over here, so it's working a bit more raw umber, and I'm working it in. You see it not there. I've moved that pile up a little bit so that I've got light, darker, darker, darker. Yeah, there we go. That's the perfect tonal value for there. By the looks of it. We'll see if he lightens up as we mix him into the other colors. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that tonal value. He seems great. Okay, see, I'm going to add just one or two little really fine lines. So I've created a chisel point using this small brush. Just added one or two fine lines in there, just for some finer details. Great, let's take a look. The same dark color seems to be in this vicinity over here. There's two tail feathers over there. I think we can even go darker on that one. If I look really carefully, sometimes I can make out individual feathers. You can try and suggest them, but I usually don't bother. I'm just looking for those little shadings that clumps of feathers are forming, and I'm adding those shadings in. Using these little stripes. And that's enough. For example, here, can you see there's like one almost like a row of shading that goes from dark and that goes lighter, and here's dark and going lighter. I'm just adding those shadings in. That's all I'm interested in. So I'll start here where it needs to be dark with the paint that I've just picked up, because he's at his darkest. And then as I go up, he's now mixing, so that gives me my shading. But because I'm using these short little strokes, it doesn't look like individual shadings, it looks like individual hairs. Great, and then guy comes to around this vicinity around here. And again, all these guys just more or less positionings, guys. Just more or less positionings. It's good enough. So what I usually do to get these positionings as close as what I can, without actually measuring them and painstakingly getting them perfect, is I just judge where I'm working against something else that's already on the picture. For example, this little bit that I'm working with here, I'm judging by the legs. I can see they go sort of behind the legs and then they go upwards. So that's what I'm doing. And then from there, here's another little dark patch. And that dark patch is, here's a little white feather. So I'm taking that white feather. It comes out just that side of that white feather. And so on. That's how I'm getting all those different little positionings close, but not perfect. And I promise you they'll be close enough. Alright, can you see there? That's more like a grey. So I'm going to just wipe off the excess using my cloth. You can use a paper towel as well, because that's a little overlapping feather over there. So it's overlapping the wing. The wing is grey, so some of that grey from the wing is now peeping through there. Alright, so can't really go too much further with this guy until we've got that wing in. So I'm just going to work here on getting these little tonal values and stuff a little bit more correct while we've got these colors on the brush. Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, and then while we're in this area as well, this wing casts a shadow over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this dark, and right there where that overlaps, I'm going to add in that little darker tonal value. Let's get just a little bit of medium into that so that we can get a nice flowing edge over there. You could do this later as well. Once you've put in the main feather, you could also do it later. But for now, I'm going to just add in that little line over there. Clean my brush completely. Just wipe on my cloth. And now I'm going to just brush over that. So what happens is it forms a short little shading downwards by rubbing over it, because the top edge, you never touch that edge again. So he'll always stay nice and sharp. But because you're brushing over it, the bottom edge fades out and it gives you that cast shadow over there. There's also a bit of a cast shadow, but that we need to do with the wing color. Great. Now there's a nice big area over there. So I think I'll go back to using our original paintbrush. So for that we said we will take some Paynes grey and just add white to it. And we said we should be able to modify this. So now that I've done a bunch, I can see that is this little highlight color over there. It's pretty much the same thing. So we'll darken him up. So I'm going to take some white. We'll get some more Paynes grey in there. A bit more this time. And then even more. I think those are nice colors. I'm going to add just a smidgen of sky color in there. Some of that cerulean. I'm definitely, now that my eyes are a bit more tuned in, I can definitely see some cerulean in that area over there. So there's definitely some of the sky color reflecting in the bird's feathers in the dark. there. Let's get some cerulean into this. And some medium. So that's nice. Now we've got some reflected light happening here in this painting as well. Reflected light always adds tons of realism without you having to do much work. Great. So we'll just start off at a point. So now it's back to just creating the shape. In other words, we can see some of this color in this vicinity over here. Leave the edges because they need to be blended out and stuff. Just get right the correct colors at the correct places so that we can get the shape right. Then we can come back in and add details. Each feather, you're just going to pick out those little edges on the feathers, and that's going to give you that feeling of seeing each individual feather. So just use a chopping little motion and just get that edge plotted out like that. So let me zoom back in again so you can see that texture that I'm creating there. Alright, so I'm just taking a contrasting color. So in this area it is light, so I'm taking that little highlight color. And all I'm trying to get is that little edge, but I want that edge to look like it's got feathers. Maybe I'll even just draw it on a larger scale, just on a piece of paper for you. So let me pick up a big brush, pick up some paint. So that edge that I'm doing is this. Can you see that? So that looks like each individual feather. Sounded like a teacher there. Yeah, so look carefully on your reference and just pick out a few little, some of them are round like that because it's the edge, and sometimes it's that little central spine of the feather that you're seeing. Here's some light little feathers happening over here, so just dabs, dashes. In other words, I'm not creating a solid line, I'm creating a line with little lines. So just look at the directions. Make sure you're getting these directions correct. Okay, over there we have an edge. So I think we'll skip that edge for now. Let's just continue creating this little just the feather textures for now. Just keep working on that. Here's just a random little white spot over there, so I'll use some white. That cream that we used for the highlight. Just a distinctive little mark on that fella. Some of these feathers you can see more of them, some of them you can see less of them. It all just depends on how they're being overlapped. Right, so there, those guys were quite light. As we go to there, they're becoming darker, those edges. So I'll stick here by this side until I'm happy with all these edges over there. Here's some lines running down this way. Now I'm going to go to a darker color. Just make sure it's a color that will just contrast enough for you to see it. In the area that you're painting it. So I'm adding in those little edges for each of these feathers here. Here it's not as visible, so just like that, that's good enough. Right, now over here, here's some darker feathers. So I'm going to pick up a darker color than what I've got over there at the moment. And I'm going to create the edge of that darker feather over there. Same as what we've been doing up to this point. Like that. And then I'm just going to work that color upwards. So that we end up with that bit of a contrast. Here's another guy. He's also a darker one. So let's get his edge. Are these things in the exact same position? No. Are they in the vicinity? Good enough. Okay, let's see, is there any little other details inside these guys and so on. Sometimes you do have just little darker dabs and dashes that you can, if you see them, what the heck, put them in. Alright, and then while we're at it, let's get this edge here nice and sharp as well. So if you need to, just thin down your paint a little bit more with some painting medium, just so that it can flow off the brush in this area over here. So now you have that overlap where these white hairs are overlapping that. So create yourself just that little bit of a jagged edge. So it's not perfect. And that will now suggest those overlapped hairs over there. Then we can come back in there with just one or two little individual overlapped hairs, and it'll look like a whole feather because you've got the basic feathery shape. Defined there already. In other words, we create the illusion, your brain does all the rest. Take a look over here. So I'm picking up some of that white, our highlight color that we used on the chest. And I'm picking it up with a chisel point on the brush. I'm just gently working it over there. You see, just like that, those individual guys. It looks like all sorts of individual hairs that are overlapping, little feather hairs. Pretty cool, eh? Okay, so while I've got this light color on the brush, I'm going to paint there and all these guys over here. But I think I'm going to paint them with, yeah, I think I'll stick with that. Let's paint all that in, just block it in. So it's sort of a bit of a grey white. It's not white white. So here and there I do now have some dark that touch the other feather. So I'm just adding a few little light lines to show, just to create a stripy effect over there. And that gives you individual feathers over there. Maybe even once we've put that in, come back in with a darker version. Just edge them off a little bit more. Okay, here's that distinct little cast shadow over there, working him in. And then we've got this other little lighter feather. So I'm putting in the dark bit like that. And here I'm just flicking him inwards, one or two little stripes to create that impression that is joining up or being overlapped by the white feathers over there. Okay, now I'll have to wash the brush. And let's get some of this white. And get a good little edge over there. A sharp white edge. if needed, pick up some of this dark or some of this brown that you had underneath there on the body. Work it in there to make sure that you've got that distinct little contrast between the feather and the body underneath. Yeah, I'm doing the same as what I did on that little cast shadow over there. I'm rubbing over it so that this bottom edge over here is a faded and that top edge over there is a solid line. Alrighty, let's just continue over there, adding that little texture in over there. I'll just have to move that picky up a little bit for now. Yes, like I say, just keep adding these little edges in. Lighter or darker as necessary. Over here, I'm even going to use our main highlight color that we used on the chest, just in this area over here. It's so little, and it will now mix with the other colors. Let's use that highlight color as well, just to get this little shape in over there. Just a random little triangle area. Alrighty, this is just a little bit too stripy, so I'm just tapping over it just to soften up those stripes. They're just a little bit too, looking too much like individual hairs, and we can't see individual hairs. All we can do is create the impression of individual hairs. There we go. Just that jagged edge over there is better. Alrighty, in there, that same, what looked light over there is going to look dark over here. So just carefully work in those little definitions. Then here on this absolute edge where the light and the dark meet, they've got a little bit of a shading. So I'm just going to blend them into each other. Make sure that you've got some of the light color on your brush. Can you see there? I'm getting rid of the dark. Over here in a random place, picking up some of the light. And then I'll blend those two colors, the light that's on the brush and the edge of the dark. And it's just in this area over here. If you don't do that, then the dark will quickly overtake the light, and then you'll find that all this here will suddenly become darker and darker as you go along down there. Just a few little random flicks to give it a hair effect as well. There we go. Now you can see individual hairs in each feather there. Great. So now that that's done, now we can continue doing this tie in over here. So I've just wiped off the excess of the brush. Go back to this browny color on the brush. And let's just continue over here. Because even this area here doesn't have any paint yet. It's quite light, so I think I'll work in some of that brightest chest color. And we can darken him up. That's great. Okay, let's just get our dark color back again, because we nicked some of that for the for over there. So I worked some of the blue, that blue color in there, which is not down yet, so we're gonna work on that. Okay, just adding a few more little flicks and things again, just little dabs and dashes, just to keep getting that feather effect going here. Okay, maybe let's stand back. It's nice to stand back again, every now and again, just to see what you've done. Yeah, it's looking quite nice, eh? So I'm just gonna, staying wide, just add a few little extra marks in over here. It's nothing new, no new technique. Great, so all we have now left to do is two areas. We've got that little bit over there and that little bit over there. Luckily, they're nice and easy. So let's start with the tip of the tail. Great, so as you can see, it's pretty much black with little bits of white. So I'm just going to take, I think I'll stick with this. Let's go to that guy. And then we use some neat Paynes grey. So let's put some Paynes grey down over there, because we do want to just get a little bit of painting medium into that, just for the drying effect. And that's why I'm not using anything over there. Yeah, that's great. Now I'm literally just going to block it in with a black. on that edge there, making sure I can see the three feathers. Okay, then over here, there's that little bit of a white going up over there. A little bit of a jagged edge over there, just to create some bit of a look that there's individual feathers from the white, the edge of those feathers. And it's not a lot of paint, it's very thin little layer. Just enough to cover the canvas. Yeah, like that. That's awesome. Alright, so while we're at it, we've got that white over there. But I can see that there's a little bit of a dark, like a little bit of a shadow over there. So I've wiped off the excess of that Paynes grey on my cloth. So just whatever tiny amount is left, I'm going to put over there, and then over here. Now I'm going to go back to my small little brush again. Let's get him clean, give him a wash, and we'll pick up our highlight color. Carefully block that in, don't touch the black. And just add a small little shading over here. Just a cast shadow shading. To show that that little feather is coming out. Because underneath here, you can't get any, the light can't get in there. And there, I'm just going to make that black. In other words, there's a little bit of this sticking out over there. Just peeping out. Yeah, that's great. There we go. Because that little cast shadow lifts up those feathers over there. Right, so now let's take some of this. The darkest color we used for the wing feather. That's going to become a nice little highlight for here. So I'm just going to run him up there. Run him up there just to form that shape of that feather over there. Now here's multiple feathers, so that's all you're going to do, just run super thin little lines along here to indicate those other feathers. Don't worry about the white dots, that's irrelevant. Okay, that's about as far as we can go with that. There, I'm just going to fade that in because it gets dark over there. Also a bit of a looking in effect. Cool, wash your brush. Now, take some of your highlight color, just put it one side somewhere where it's clean. And now we're going to use this paint bit with lots of paint on your brush. Create yourself a line running down there. One stroke, pick it up, wash your brush. Because he's now got black on him. If you need to do any adjustments, everything from here on has to happen with a clean brush. Washing the brush, picking up paint. Okay, we've got a little dot over there, so I'm going to put down a dot, stop, take off excess paint, wash the brush, pick up new paint. That's the only way you're going to get this to stay clean and bright. If you need to adjust that shape, stop, clean, wash the brush, adjust the shape with new paint on your brush. Make one adjustment and stop. Like for example, I can't paint that whole shape in one go, so I'm putting some down, clean, wash the brush, pick up new paint. Because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to pick up some of the dark and then it's going to mix with the black underneath. And then you end up with a grey. And then you can't get it light again. Because as it is, you've used now lots of paint, thick paint, to create that dot. Cool, that guy over there is a little bit darker. So I'm going to take just white, a tiny touch of grey into it. See, just a little bit, clean the brush. A little bit of the shape, clean the brush. And there's another little offset mark on that bottom feather there. He's not so bright, so I'm happy for him to mix in just a little bit. Alright, so let's check things out. There's not enough contrast between that light feather and the tail feather, so I'm going to make sure I darken this up until I can see that light guy over there. If necessary, bring in more raw umber. Into that. Just work on those contrasts until you're happy with them. So pretty much at this point we're done. So all you're going to do is just stand back and just double check all your little contrasts and stuff in these areas. For example, that little cast shadow over there. Now that we've got the feather, the wing itself in, you can see that that's not quite dark enough, so I'm putting him in and fading him down. Cast shadows always fade themselves outwards and downwards. Great, let's do those legs. So birds aren't winning any pretty legs competition any day soon. Pretty ugly legs. So I'm going to just take a little bit of crimson, because it's not quite orange or anything. And it's not quite red, so I'll just take a smidgen of crimson, just the tiniest little amount. And I'll stick with this little brush. You know what, I'm not even going to wash him. So I'm going to take just a little bit of crimson into the orange. And that should more or less give us our darkest color. Maybe just a tiny touch of raw umber into that as well. Yeah, that should give us our darkest color. So I'll put just a drop of medium down there that I can work into there, just to get a nice flowing color. And I'm going to block this in on this darkest side. Like that, right up against the roof of the house. There, just like that. And I'm going to see where else do I have some little dark areas. Probably something like that. Now you can just pick up some of your light color, any light color anywhere that you've got on your palette at that stage, because you just need tiny amounts of it. And I'm gonna just create a lighter version of this. And I'm just gonna pop it in again with the same little dabs and dashes, just dabs and taps, so that you get an uneven look. It's no smooth shading. It must be quite rough and uneven like that. Like that. And now just to get that chicken leg look, just going to make one more color with a little bit more raw umber. You know, I'd even maybe just use that raw umber color over there. Just work it in here. Just get a bit of a dirtier look. I work in just a few little dabs and taps. So I am using the photo as a guide, but I'm really not putting in much effort to follow it. Because the last thing you're looking at when you're looking at the bird is its legs. You're looking at the face and all the other detailed areas. Alrighty, let's stand back and see what does this look like. Yeah, there we go. There's our completed seagull. So I hope you enjoyed painting the seagull with me. Good luck with your seagull. If you did enjoy today's lesson, please don't forget to like and subscribe the video. Leave a message below. Let me know what other classes you want me to give you. And then, of course, there's lots more videos and classes like this on my website. I'll leave a link below. Go and check them out. I'll see you next time. Take care.